Algebra 2. Today we're going to look at word problems using systems of equations. I'm going to model a couple examples with you, and then you're going to take this information and try some on your own. Example 1. Suppose you bought 8 oranges and 1 grapefruit for a total of $4.60. Later that day, you bought 6 oranges and 3 grapefruits for a total of $4.80. What is the price of each type of fruit? Suppose you bought 8 oranges and 1 grapefruit for a total of $4.60. Later that day, you bought 6 oranges and 3 grapefruit for a total of $4.80. What is the price of each type of fruit? You'll notice that I read that question a couple different times. That is a good thing to do when you're trying to solve a word problem. You got to read carefully. Always look at the question because that's obviously what we're trying to answer. We're looking for the price of each type of fruit. Another suggestion when you're trying to solve a word problem is you have to define the variable. You have to know what the question's about in order to answer it. So we're going to start by looking for the items in this question. Another hint, whatever comes first when you decide what the question's about, and this is about types of fruit, oranges come before grapefruit in the reading. So therefore, most of the time, the first item that you see in the reading is going to be the X. So I'm going to define the variable, and this is an important part of each word problem you do. So step 1, after you read it, step 2 is define the variable, and we're going to let X stand for, and we're not really looking for the number of oranges because we know how many you bought. We need to know, look back at the question, we need to know the price of each one. And so when I define my variable, I need to write it down using that language. Okay, the second variable in this problem, I'm going to use the letter Y. And again, you can change the letters, whatever you want to do. This is just usually common. And we're going to let Y stand for the price of a grapefruit. So step 1 is to read the problem and reread it as many times as you need to. Step 2 is to find the variable, define the variable. That's an important part of each question, and I'll be looking at that from you. Then the next step is to figure out what system of equations is going to represent the reading. And by system, we're talking like 2 equations here. So we know that X stands for the price of an orange and Y stands for the price of a grapefruit. Therefore, when we write down our system, we're going to start with the first purchase. Your first purchase was you bought 8 oranges. We don't know right now how much each one was, but we know that X represents that. And so right now on the board you see 8X. That is an algebraic expression that's representing the total price of all the oranges you bought for that first purchase. So 8 times the price of an orange. You also bought grapefruit, so there'll be a plus sign. Grapefruit is the Y. The price of the grapefruit is Y. We know you bought 1 grapefruit, so 1Y represents the total price of the grapefruit. We know that first purchase you spent $4.60. So that's your first equation. Second equation is going to come from this sentence. Later that day, you bought 6 oranges and 3 grapefruits for a total of $4.80. So you went back and you purchased 6 more oranges. Again, we still don't know the price of them, but we know that 6X represents the total price of the oranges at that time. We know you also purchased grapefruit. You purchased 3 of them. 3y again represents the total amount of money you spent on grapefruit during that purchase. And it's equal to $4.80. So you've read the problem, you've reread it as many times as you need to, you've searched for the question's asking for price. That will always be the big hint as to how you're going to define your variable. You have to use the price of an orange. If you write X is orange, that's technically incorrect. So I'm trying to point out some things I've noticed some of my former students making common mistakes on. And that way I'm trying to help you avoid those. Then you're going to set up your two equations. Again, we're talking about systems here. And then you have learned 3 different ways to solve systems. You could graph it if you want and figure out if they intersect or parallel or same line. You've learned the process of elimination, where you just combine 2 equations and try to cancel one of the letters. And you've learned the substitution method, where you take one of the equations, solve it for x or y, and then take that expression and substitute it into the other equation, thus trying to get the x value and the y value back. With this problem that's currently on the board, I'm going to choose elimination for this process. So I'm going to notice that my x's are positive 8 and positive 6. Obviously, these do not add up to 0. 1 plus 3 does not add up to 0. But I would really like this term right here to be a negative 3. And I can easily do that by multiplying the entire top equation by a negative 3. And so that is what my game plan is. Okay, so for the first equation, if I'm distributing the negative 3 times 8 is negative 24x. Negative 3 times 1y is negative 3y. And then we're going to multiply $4.60 times negative 3 to get negative $13.80. Second equation, I'm not changing, so I'm going to recopy underneath, and that way I keep everything organized to prevent making a silly mistake. And so this is the equation, the system of equations that I'm actually trying to solve right now. Don't lose sight that x stands for the price of orange and y stands for the price of grapefruit. Negative 3 plus 3 is going to cancel for me very nicely. I am going to be left with a negative 24 plus 6, which is negative 18x, equals, and then I have a negative 13.80 plus 4.80, and that's going to give me a negative 9. I'm going to divide by negative 18 on both sides. So x is going to be equal to negative 9 divided by negative 18, which is a positive 1/2. Or, since we're talking about prices, it probably would not be a good idea to leave it like that, so I'm going to call it 50 cents. 0.50. Okay, so I currently have my x value. And one thing I really do need to do is make sure that I put the $ here, because we are talking about a price. So technically that's what I need to do there. And then I go back and I look for the y value, and the last time we did this with elimination, I told you could pick any of the two, like either of the two top equations. It really doesn't matter. They both work. I'm going to recopy the top one. And then underneath, I'm going to say 8 times 0.50, and then plus y is equal to 460. 8 times 0.5 is just 4. you're going to transpose your 4 to the other side. So it's going to look like y equals 4.60 minus 4. And then y is going to equal the difference between those, which is 0.60. And again, thinking back to the problem, y in the defining variable part is the price of a grapefruit. So technically I do need a little dollar symbol here. And so what is the price of each type of fruit? The oranges have to be 50 cents a piece, and the grapefruit has to be 60 cents a piece. And you can always do a quick check. You can take this, substitute 50 cents here and 60 cents here, and like 8 times 50 cents, for example, would be $4. 1 times 60 cents is 60 cents, and then 4 plus 60 cents is $4.60. And then you'll have to check it in the second equation too to make sure, like guaranteed, that these are both correct and is a solution to this system. Okay, we'll try question 2. Question 2 says you are taking a test worth 100 points. And the test actually contains 40 questions. So it tells me how many points the test is and the total number of questions. There are 2-point questions on the test, and there are 4-point questions on the test. How many of each type of question is on the test? Okay, so this time, after I reread it, I noticed that this question, this word problem, is actually dealing with the number. It says how many. So when I define my variables, I'm going to choose to let X stand for how many, the number. We're not talking about prices this time, we're talking about number. Number of what? Well, there's 2 different types of questions on this test, and as I go back and read it, the second sentence is telling me there's 2-point questions and 4-point questions. Since the 2-point questions came first in the reading, then I'm going to let X be the number of 2-point questions. And I'm going to let Y equal the number of 4-point questions. So we've read it, we've defined our variable, and now we are ready to set up a system of equations. Based on the first sentence, you are taking a test worth 100 points. If X stands for how many questions are 2 points, the number, and Y stands for the number of the 4-point questions, we don't know the number of each of these. That's the entire task. But what we do know is that both of these styles of problems are on this test, and we know it's 100 points. So that means that X plus Y, the number of 2-point questions plus the number of 4-point questions, has to total 100 points. So the first equation that I've written down is really the point equation, if you will, okay? And it's not necessarily you write that down, but I just want to make sure you know where it's coming from. And then the second equation is going to be dealing with the number of points. Well, there's 2-point questions. How many? I don't know. But I know if I write 2x down, then that represents the number of 2-point questions, actually the number of points of the 2-point questions total on this test. So 2 times x. For example, totally guessing here, but if there were 9 questions that were 2 points apiece, 9 times 2 is 18. That's how many points would represent that part of the test. So that's how you need to think about 2x. And then you're going to take the 4-point questions, multiply it by how many there are. I don't know, so I'm going to write y. And it's equal to, and then I know that that's the total points, and so that's going to be 100. And then I'm going to go back up here, because in just a second, let me rewrite this. This is the number of points. This is the point equation. And I noticed up here, I made a mistake, so I'm going to go back. X and Y stand for the number of questions of the 2-point, and Y stands for the number of 4-point. There's not 100 questions on this test, so let me rewrite this. There's 40. Okay, so the first equation is the number equation, and the second equation I've written down is the point equation. Okay, and I apologize, I typed that incorrectly. So make sure you've corrected it in your notes. X plus y equals 40. Why? Because the number of questions for 2-point and the number of 4-point questions has to equal 40 questions. And then the points all go together. So 2-point, 4-point, 100-point. Okay, and then it's your call as to what method you want to pick. I'm just going to stick with elimination again, and I'm going to notice that the top equation here, if I want to cancel the x's, then this needs to be a -2. If I want to get rid of the y's, this needs to be a -4. It's totally up to you with the method you choose, and also if you do choose elimination, that you decide which letter you want to cancel. So I'm just going to go with that. The top equation is going to read -4x minus 4y is equal to -160. The second equation I'm not changing. And I noticed that I actually have accomplished my goal. -4 plus 4 is 0y, so that cancels. And then we're just going to combine our x values and our numbers. So -4 plus 2 gives me a -2x, and then equals -160, and a positive 100 is a -60. And you're going to divide by -2. And then that means that x is going to be equal to 30. Okay, now let's go back and look at the defining part. X stands for the number of 2-point questions. So really, technically, we should write this down. There are 30 2-point questions on the test. Okay, now I need to know what the y value is. I'm going to pick one of the top equations. I'm going to choose the top one, the first one, because it looks easier. I'm going to put 30 in place of x. I'm then going to solve for y. And I'm going to end up getting y is equal to, looks like 10. And so y stands for the number of 4-point questions. So there are 10 4-point questions on the test. Okay, so that looks like our answer, and we can do a quick check to see if it even makes sense. If there are 30 2-point questions, 30 times 2 is 60. If there are 10 4-point questions, 10 times 4 is 40. 60 plus 40 is 100 points. And then we want to make sure there's still 40 questions on the test. And it looks like there are. If there's 30 of the first type and 10 of the second type, we should be good to go. And so again, the whole process of you working word problems is you have to be a good reader. You might need to read it more than one time. This part is a must. Please make sure that you define your variable in every practice problem you have. Tell me what x and y stand for. You are then to set up your 2 equations. You get to pick which method, graphing, elimination, or substitution you want to use. You're going to show me the entire process of how you solved. And then the last thing you need to do to get like full credit is just make sure you did what I did here, and when you answer it, you're very specific. You don't just say x is 5, y is 2. You tell me what they stand for. Okay? And that's the entire process of a word problem. It just takes practice, kind of getting your mind wrapped around the step process, and then you just, like I said, practicing, putting it to use, and going from there. Okay? So we'll give this a try.